Welcome to another episode of Mike Reads. Tonight we'll be continuing in our series in Henry Hazlitt's Economics in One Lesson with our final read in the series, A Note on Books. As I've mentioned throughout the course of this series, we are doing this series as a parallel read with Thomas Sowell's Economic Facts and Fallacies. So I'll put a link in this video's description to that series so you can follow along there as well. As I've mentioned throughout the course of the series, we have actually recently finished it up, so go ahead and check that out. Excuse me. One final thing before we get started. As I've mentioned throughout the course of this series, I do an analysis and a review at the end of each read. I'll put his timestamp in this video's description so you can jump straight to the analysis and review. But there really isn't much to say, so I'm just going to have it be part of the same video instead of having it sectioned off as I have throughout the course of this series. And the final thing before we get into tonight's read, a lot of the books that he's mentioning here as far as further reading is concerned, he lists the publishing information in parenthetical. That kind of completely derails the read, so I'm just not going to read that. And also, you guys can look that up, and most of this information is way out of date. So, without further ado, let's dive into tonight's read, A Note on Books. Those who desire to read further in economics should turn next to some work of intermediate length and difficulty. I know of no single volume in print today that completely meets this need, but there are several that together supply it. There is an excellent short book, 126 pages, by Faustino Balve, Essentials of Economics, which briefly summarizes principles and policies. A book that does that at somewhat greater length, 327 pages, is Understanding the Dollar Crisis by Percy L. Greaves. Bettina Bien-Greaves has assembled 2 volumes of reading on free market economics. The reader who aims at a thorough understanding and feels prepared for it should next read Human Action by Ludwig von Mises. This book extended the logical unity and precision of economics beyond that of any previous work. A 2-volume work written 13 years after Human Action by a student of Mises is Murray and Rothbard's Man, Economy, and State. This contains much original and penetrating material. Its exposition is admirably lucid, and its arrangement makes it in some respects more suitable for textbook uses than Mises' great work. Short books that discuss special economic subjects in a simple way are Planning for Freedom by Ludwig von Mises and Capitalism and Freedom by Milton Friedman. There is an excellent pamphlet by Murray and Rothbard, What Has Government Done to Our Money? On the urgent subject of inflation, a book by the present author has recently been published, The Inflation Crisis and How to Resolve It. Among recent works which discuss current ideologies and developments from a point of view similar to that of this volume are the present author's The Failure of the New Economics, an analysis of the Keynesian fallacies, and the same author's monumental F.A. Hayek's The Road to Serfdom, and the same author's monumental Constitution of Liberty. Ludwig von Mises' Socialism and Economic and Sociological Analysis is the most thorough and devastating critique of collectivistic doctrines ever written. The reader should not overlook, of course, Frederick Bastiat's Economic Sophisms, and particularly his essay on what is seen and what is not seen. Those who are interested in working through the economic classics might find it most profitable to do this in the reverse of their historical order. Presented in this order, the chief works are to be consulted, with the dates of their first editions are Philip Wickstead, The Common Sense of Political Economy, 1911, John Bates Clark, The Distribution of Wealth, 1899, Eugen von Böhm-Bawerk, excuse me, folks, The Positive Theory of Capital, 1888, Karl Menger, The Principles of Economics, 1871, W. Stanley Jevons, The Theory of Political Economy, 1871, John Stuart Mill, The Principles of Political Economy, 1848, David Ricardo, The Principles of Political Economy and Taxation, 1817, and Adam Smith's The Wealth of Nations, 1776. Economics broadens out in 100 directions. Whole libraries have been written on specialized fields alone, such as money and banking, foreign trade and foreign exchange, taxation and public finance, government control, capitalism and socialism, wages and labor relations, interest and capital, agricultural economics, rent, prices, profits, markets, competition and monopoly, value and utility, statistics, business cycles, wealth and poverty, social insurance, housing, public utilities, mathematical economics, studies of special industries and of economic history. But no one will ever properly understand any of these specialized fields unless he has first of all acquired a firm grasp of basic economic principles and the complex interrelationship of all economic factors and forces. When he has done this by his reading in general economics, he can be trusted to find the right books in his special field of interest. All right, that concludes tonight's read and the entirety of economics in one lesson. The only thing I really have to say about the read in terms of analysis and review is that Hazlitt is 100% correct to recommend doing a reverse chronology of the works of economics if you're first introducing yourself into the world of economics. The main reason is that it's going to be a much more digestible process to do things like that. For example, if you were to start with Adam Smith's The Wealth of Nations, I'll put a link in this video's description to that series because we did that here. What you're going to have to get through is an absolute tome of a book, over 1,200 pages long, and written in the English of 1776. So it's not exactly an easily digestible read at all. And if that's where you're going to start, you're probably going to wind up stumbling. So I would recommend starting more recently with the English of, say, Thomas Sowell. The book I would recommend starting off with is Economic Facts and Fallacies. Again, link is in this video's description so you can check that out. So Thomas Sowell writes in modern English, in a very understandable English, and his books are, generally speaking, concise. So you can get through them in a reasonable manner, and you'll be able to grasp and digest what's been going on. From him, who I think you should really start with. Now, Thomas Sowell also has a book called Basic Economics. I think it was intended to be an introductory textbook into economics. His other works are actually better than that if you're just introducing yourself to economics. And in fact, I would probably shelve Basic Economics for a later period, to be honest. But yeah, the book I would start with would be Economic Facts and Fallacies. And the reason is this book will break you. So if you're an adult trying to get into the world of economics, you probably have your own common precepts, and many of these precepts are going to come with commonly held misconceptions. And for that, you just need to be broken. And that's what he does in this book. He takes the most commonly held fallacies and just tears them apart. And then once you've turned to rubble all of the things that you accept to be true that are not true, then you can start from nothing and start absorbing what is actually true about economics. And like I said, the reverse chronology is the best way to do that. In fact, I would recommend reading Thomas Sowell's Economic Facts and Fallacies before reading Henry Hazlitt's Economics in one lesson. So if you came here first, go to Economic Facts and Fallacies, go to our other reads. On this channel from Thomas Sowell, I would recommend then going to somebody like Hayek. I would recommend then going to somebody like Mises, Bastiat, Friedman, and then Hayek. Generally speaking, follow that reverse chronology. He makes Hazlitt spends a lot of time on Ludwig von Mises, and especially on his seminal work, Human Action. That book is 2,000 pages long. So I would highly recommend putting that one off until you've gotten a pretty firm grasp of economics to begin with. The only other thing that I would add that he doesn't mention here is that, and I think he does this on purpose, is that you should absolutely know thy enemy. So you should also at some point, and I would probably, again, put this off until you've gotten a firm grasp of advanced economics, you should be reading Keynes's General Theory, even though it's horrible and on so many levels obviously wrong. And even though it's going to be an absolute bear to get through if you know anything about economics, because it's just horribly incorrect. But you should absolutely know thy enemy. And on that note, you should at some point, and I will have to at some point, get through Marx's Das Kapital. Again, this is a tome of a book, roughly 2,000 pages long. And from what I understand, there's very little of it that he actually gets right, and that it is a brutal slog to get through. So that might be one of these books that you would save for way, way, way after you've completed a series of readings in economics. And once you have a firm grasp of not even intermediate economics, but a very complex monetary theory. So that's really all I have to say about all of that. A very special and very sincere thanks to everyone who has stayed with me throughout the course of this read, and especially those who managed to make it into this particular read so we can get into further reading. Speaking of which, let me know in the comments section what book you want me to read next, because we have completed all of our active reads. It'll probably wind up being something by Thomas Sowell. I might have a video I put out just to ask for recommendations for what I should read next on this channel, the way I've been reading the way I've been reading Henry Hazlitt's Economics in One Lesson and Thomas Sowell's Economic Facts and Fallacies. So do let me know what you want me to read next. And again, sincere thanks to everyone who's stuck with me throughout this entire process. Been an absolute pleasure. We'll see you in the next one. It's been Mike, signing off.